Hello and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. Before we get to the show, let's get the pleasantries out of the way.
First of all, our website. If you want more information about our little podcast, go to wearethecontrarians.com. That's where you'll find links to our old episodes, to our Patreon channel, and to our awesome Contrarians merch.
You can show your support by buying a Contrarians mug or a pillow.
I like the laptop bags myself.
Second of all, if you enjoy the show, tell your friends. Or even go a step further and leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you use to listen to your podcasts.
Finally, if you want to reach out directly to us, that's what social media is for. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Contrarian Prime, or check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/Contrarian Prime.
Julio runs our official Twitter account at Contrarian Prime, but if you want to give me a piece of your mind or just want to banter about pro wrestling, you can follow me at Contrarian Alex.
And that's it. That's our intro.
Now, time for the show.
This is all
And we are recording for Contrarians Corner for Frank.
Hello, and welcome back to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. My name is Alex, joined as always by my contrarian counterpart, Julio Oliveira. Julio, how are you doing today? You ready to put on a giant papier-mâché head and just deny reality?
Is it paper mache or is it fiberglass? Because I've seen it referred as both in different quotes, different sources.
It looks like papier-mâché, and you know, going off what the source material is, I think it's papier-mâché, meant to be interpreted that way at least.
I mean, that's pretty resilient then for paper mache. So I would think that would get squished pretty quickly.
What are you talking about? I mean, you know, paper mache, and you can make it like a clay almost where it's hardened, because, you know, what we see later on in the movie when Frank's head busts open, it definitely looks like almost like a ceramic. But I remember making paper mache when I was a little kid that was hard enough to break, kind of like a brick or something.
Did you make a mask for yourself?
No, I remember seeing like how to make paper mache on Nickelodeon one time, and like I made like a face, I can't remember what I made. I remember it had it was a green face and red eyes, but it wasn't something to put on me. It was just kind of like arts and crafts time.
Something to stare at.
Yeah.
Well,
speaking of something to stare at, Michael Fassbender.
Speaking of artsy and craftsy, Michael Fassbender making his debut on the main feed. We had him.
It's a pretty fitting way for him to debut on this, and to where we don't see him until the last 10 minutes of the movie.
Incognito. He was with us when we did the Prometheus commentary, but you know, that's a different kind of beast.
Yeah.
Here he can't escape. We're going to analyze him. Him and his pretentious type of music. What is this? What do you call the music that they play in this movie, Alex?
I don't know. Would this be like experimental, industrial? A little bit Flaming Lips. Not for me is what I would call it.
Yes. I call it pretentious bullshit. All right. Well, Frank, were you disappointed that this was not about Frank Stallone?
That would have been absolutely fantastic.
He takes the mask off as Frank Stallone.
He takes the mask off. It's Frank Stallone. He just launches into that speech he goes into in Fred Claus. Whatever the case, we're going to Wicklow, Ireland. We're going to Albuquerque, New Mexico. We're going to 2014's Frank, directed by Lenny Abrahamson. I had some difficulty pronouncing that on our last episode. And then written by John Ronson and Peter Staugen. And Julio, why are we discussing this movie?
This comes to us courtesy of patron Josh Ragland, who came up to the plate during this patron takeover that has taken over the entire 2023, feels like. Josh is famous around Contrarians Corners for two reasons, Alex. One is that I think last year he made a Christmas movie watch list to help me develop a taste for Christmas movies. I don't know if you remember this, but
I do, yes.
Yeah, and I watched them all, and I rated them all. And we talked about it on the Patreon channel. So that's number one. Number two is that he's a fellow Pearl Jam fan. And we've never met. We just know each other through the internet. But it turns out that both him and I were at the same Pearl Jam concert when they played here in Austin for ACL. And he doesn't even live in Austin. just came to ACL years and years ago. So
That's excellent.
in a way, it's fitting that when he finally got to give us a movie to talk about on the show, he would give us a movie that revolves around music, because music is one of the connections we have. Now, if you ask me, Pearl Jam is a little more my speed compared to what Michael Fassbender and his band are doing here, but still, there is a little bit of a connection.
And do we have his reasoning for why he chose this?
He gave me a link to his Letterboxd review. So, Josh, we will be reading your thoughts once we get to Real Talk.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited to dive into this one, so let's get right to it. By first explaining to any potential new listeners what they can expect here on the Contrarians. Here on the Contrarians, we like to rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. That is our battle cry. Find a movie on Rotten Tomatoes that is highly rated, a lot of times accompanied with that just gorgeous, lovely IP that indicates that it is certified fresh. And what we will do with those movies is cut them down to size. We will discuss some of the maybe overlooked negative aspects of it that, for whatever reason, no one's called out. Bad direction, questionable acting, bad storytelling, poor score, just anything that we can, sink our teeth into, dig our claws into to make our case. Conversely, we'll find a movie on Rotten Tomatoes that is lowly rated, one of those nasty green splotches known as rotten. And we, as you could guess, will make a case for that film's positive merit. We will find what we can to do our job in making it sound like a good movie. For our rotten films, we usually shoot for about 30% below. For our fresh movies, we usually, about 85% and above. We'll bend our rules from time to time for our wonderful patrons. But being that Frank is a towering 92% certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes with over 150 reviews. So it's not just, 8 people were like, hey, this movie's good. It's the real deal Holyfield.
23,000 people watch him on YouTube.
Interestingly enough, the audience scores 72% with over 10,000 logged ratings. I think we'll eventually get to why that could be. But what I'm describing and what we're going to do with Frank here, that's just our first half. We call that Contrarians Corner. Julio, if listeners want to know how we really feel about the movie we're discussing, in this case, Frank, they just have to hang around for the second half for part 2 of the episode.
That is correct. The second part of every episode, aptly titled Real Talk, is where we tell you how we really feel. I think that by now we've both been pretty open about how we feel about the music in Frank, but that doesn't mean that that's how we feel about the movie itself. So if you want to know how we feel about Frank, if you want to know how we experience Frank, independently of the Rotten Tomatoes score, independently of our gimmick here for Contrarians Corner, well, you stick around for the second half, and that's where you will learn that. I had seen this movie before, long time ago, back in 2016, according to Letterboxd. Alex, this is his first time, so it should be an interesting discussion. But before that, it's super fresh, so we're going to talk about it as if it was super rotten. That's what's going to happen in Contrarians Corner.
In the soup, ginger crouton, cover it in grease, raw lemon.
So 92% certified fresh with this kind of movie, too. I imagine it's one of those that probably put that certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes sticker on the DVD release.
This movie was too hip for DVD, Alex.
It went right to minidisc.
Yes.
Betamax. Well, whatever the case, Julio, what were critics saying about this?
All right, we've got a handful of fresh tomatoes from the Rotten Tomatoes website. We're going to start with Frank Ocean from Puputik. Man, already. I mean, Puputik, that is a website that would cover a movie like Frank. He says, Frank is a delightful, finger-snapping oddball set to music and creative mayhem. Did you find yourself snapping your fingers as you were watching this movie, Alex?
Just in the sense of like, let's go. Come on. Keep it going.
Move it along. Next song, please. Cody Corral from Paste Magazine says, Frank is much more interested in the rough than the diamond, and because of that, it remains one of the more refreshing representations of musical genius and the nature of fame in recent memory. Musical genius, Alex. Do you think that they may be overselling Michael Fassbender's talent in this movie?
A tad. I think that might be a bit taxing.
I mean, I think even the movie would agree or, would disagree with that. I don't think the movie presents him as a musical genius. Presents him as somebody that can make music, but I think it's about something other than his actual talent. Next, John Louis from The Straits Times, Singapore, says, Abrahamson finds a wider range of emotion from Fassbender's dull head than other directors do from an ensemble of players.
I mean, that the credit for that should go to Michael Fassbender. I hate the idea that we're crediting... Michael Fassbender is literally one of the greatest actors of the last 25 years. And we're like, oh, yeah, can you believe it? He could act his way out of a paper bag.
It's so good the way that they framed that shot of his unemoting doll head. All right, we're going to close with Robert Roughton from Laramie Moviescope, who says a film ought to have something more to recommend it than a high degree of strangeness. But being strange is what this film is all about. Resistance to this film's goofy charm is futile. Resistance is futile, Alex.
People have been telling me that about the city of Austin for several years, and I very much disagree.
Appropriately enough, the city of Austin makes a cameo in this movie.
The city of Austin is nowhere near this movie except in name.
Alex, that's not true. I saw the sign. It said SXSW. That's Austin, right?
Yeah, with all the fucking brick road and shit. Yeah, that's Austin, all right.
Well, Austin pre-COVID, before the world moved on.
None of this movie's filmed in Austin.
I saw the Ritz.
Where?
There is a transitional shot, and even my note says, "Oh, the Ritz, R.I.P."
I'm gonna challenge you on that one.
I will play it again. I'll take a screenshot and I will send it to you.
Okay, maybe there's like a drone shot, but none of the actual like movie is filmed in Austin. Like actual them on their feet. That's not the convention center. There's no place called fucking Caps or whatever the hell they go to in Austin that's supposed to be Magnolia. We'll get to that when we get to it.
Yeah, I was going to say the names have been changed to protect the innocent.
The innocent, yeah.
All right, well, those were the quotes. Alex, take us to Contrarians Corner.
Lady in the red coat, what you doing with that bag? Lady in the blue coat, do you know the lady in the red coat?
My first note says, son of Gleason.
It's General Hux.
Son of Gleason writing songs like Elf. Because you know that scene in Elf where it's like, I'm here and you're my dad and I love you. That's what the beginning of this movie is.
Pretty cringe. Do you really not think of his Star Wars character when you see him?
Is he in the Harry Potter movies?
Yes, but I wouldn't expect you to know that or to connect him to that franchise.
I don't, but
he's one of the Weasleys.
Yeah, my sister watched this movie with me too. Okay, that's where my confusion came in. You said one of the Weasleys because she said it's da-da-da Weasley. And I thought the Ron Weasley is the little redheaded kid that hangs out with
Harry
and
Hermione.
Emma Watson. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, he's one of his older brothers.
Okay, I see. And then, yes, he is General Hux. He is featured in the unbelievable Rise of the Resistance attraction at Disney World.
Oh, that's awesome. Does he talk to you or does he talk to the bad guys and you just overhear?
He talks to, you kind of are like, fly on the wall. Like he doesn't know you're there and he's talking to Kylo Ren and then Kylo becomes aware of your presence. And
I love it. Are they talking about Frank when you're over here?
Yeah, Adam Driver tells him, every day I wake up and I wish you were dead. And then Gleason's like, you don't understand, man. I had a tour with this guy that just wore a paper mache head. Never saw him. He showered with it. Twitter immediately dates this film because it's X now. We see like that's a constant throughout the movie of which I guess in 2014 would have kind of still been a novelty. The idea of our main character, who in this case I did mention is Domhnall. I have such a hard time pronouncing Domhnall. How do you pronounce his first name?
I just say Donald.
Oh, okay. Well, you can get by with that because English is your second language.
Right.
But
my notes say General Hux.
Okay. son of Gleason. He plays John Burroughs, which sounds like if there was a bootleg NFL game that was trying to get around trademarks, instead of Joe Burrow, they would name it John Burroughs. And as Wikipedia describes him, a young wannabe musician who joins Frank's band. All right, so let's just get it out of here. While walking along the beach in his hometown, aspiring songwriter John Burroughs witnesses a man named Lucas trying to drown himself. As Lucas is taken to the hospital, John meets Don, who explains that Lucas was the keyboardist for a band called the...
Here we go.
That's one of the jokes of the movie, is because they never explain how to pronounce the name. Soron Perfbs. It's spelled Soronprfbs, and Don manages them. After mentioning that he plays keyboards, John is invited to perform with them that night. The band's drummer, Nana, synthesizer, and theremin player, Clara. Is it Clara or Clara?
I think it's Clara. It's the non-mainstream Gyllenhaal.
It is Maggie Gyllenhaal. She definitely has a presence to be felt in this. And guitarist Barquet are reluctant to accept John, but he is warmly welcomed by lead vocalist Frank, who always wears a papier-mâché mask over his head. Their performance abruptly ends when Clara storms off the stage after being shocked by an electric fault. So, he plays keyboards. Yeah, when we first see Fassbender in this, he looks like a Funko Pop.
I was thinking Jack from Jack in the Box.
Oh, that's a good one, because they don't even really use that anymore. The Frank character is based off the Frank Sidebottom character of comedian Chris Sive. In my brief research I did for this episode, I did watch some clips of Chris, and I couldn't find how to properly pronounce his last name. So Sive. I apologize, Chris. But he had a character, Frank Sidebottom, that looked an awful lot like this, and is something that was a pretty large reputation in England. Now, he was a Michael Fassbender, and when I watched this, we're recording this a day later than we typically do, because I've had some internet issues for the past week, and I was watching this movie yesterday, and literally right when he took the stage, because I had done a bit of research, so I knew this was Michael Fassbender, and right as he started to sing, the internet went out for a day, and I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. I was about to hear Michael Fassbender, croon, and now it's gone. So it immediately took me out of it. But when I resumed it today, it ends as quickly as it started, and it immediately goes into a question of, I don't know about for you, Julio. For me, it immediately became, okay, is this a road trip movie, or is this like a mystery about who this guy is?
Yeah, like I said, it's the second time I watched it, so I knew that it was not a mystery. I already knew. I wonder what it's like to watch this movie not knowing that that's Fassbender. Because, there's no opening credits.
Hold that thought, because my sister watched this not knowing anything about it with me.
I love it. I don't know that it's designed to be a mystery as far as, the real world mystery, like the meta mystery of, do you know that is this big name actor? But I knew, and that kind of takes away some of the mystique.
Well, I don't mean necessarily in do you know who the actor is, of just is the movie supposed to be, who is this guy? What's his deal?
Right.
Or is it just a story of a traveling band? Yeah.
Yeah. The quest to remove the paper mache head and find out what he looks like. Yeah. I took it's just one of those movies about the band we just did one. It's like The Commitments, only shittier, because this one, they can't play good music. Granted, they're at least originals, but to me, it was when I came back for this rewatch, I was like, oh yeah, it's a band movie. The new kid, our point of view character, becomes inducted into this band, and then it's just they make an album. I remember that they kind of become a big deal, and then they kind of fall apart, just like The Commitments, just like That Thing You Do. Just at this point, it's hard for the Contrarians not to realize that there is a very specific formula for this type of movie. So I think I recognized the formula pretty early on.
For my take, I will say that they do a pretty good job in this first sequence of masking, not masking, but just lighting wise. I couldn't tell immediately that was Maggie Gyllenhaal. So in the next scene when they're in the van together and shit, I was, oh, that's Maggie Gyllenhaal. And at the start, they do a pretty good job of having this bona fide B-lister in their movie and not really drawing attention to it. But then by the second act, she's in full Maggie Gyllenhaal mode.
So when you see her, do you go, Rachel? Or do you just think Maggie?
Rachel. No, I just think of the very like annoying Baker, the very litigious and loquacious Baker from Stranger Than Fiction that Will Ferrell, falls in love with. I'm like, man, Emma Thompson's right there. What are you doing, dude?
He likes his women combative. She's I know she has range, within her Maggie Gyllenhaalness. There is range, but in this movie, it's like Abrahamson just told her, look, here's the direction for the entirety of the film. Scowl. That's it. Anytime you think of something you want to do, just remember, scowl. That's all there is to it. Let everybody else shine, but you're here for support and for scowling, and that's what she does. She is she comes across as a very unhappy person. Even towards the end, when we get to hear her sing, it's depressing as hell.
Yes, which is like most of the movies I've ever seen her in.
She even dies in The Dark Knight.
She does, while like pleading about how it's going to be okay, and then explosion.
Wow, this is beautiful. What do you call it?
Stay away from my fucking theremin.
All right, so they basically moved to a commune in Ireland where they're going to work on this album, and I think in total they end up staying there for like a year. But in the beginning, we get like these weird happenings that we're watching through the perspective of John, because I've read a lot of things that declare Frank is the main character in this. I think Son of Gleeson is definitely the main character.
Yeah. General Hux is the one that has the arc, as we like to say. Whenever we need to default to like, who is this story about? It's really about Son of Gleeson learning that sometimes he just needs to let greatness shine on without him. And yeah, here he's just. It's weird because they basically kidnap him and take him to Ireland.
He grows a pretty sick beard in the process, but yeah.
Yeah. And he never communicates with his family again. Like, we know he has parents, but we never see him call them to tell them, like, hey, I'm okay. Because originally he was just leaving for the weekend. And I guess we have to assume that he lost his job because he told his boss that he was coming back on Monday. And he just never returns. On a whim. He just devotes his life to this band.
Yeah, and when we get there, we get some of the band members seem like they're trying to escape, and we wonder if this is like a cult or a commune. And we get kind of the Lancaster Dodd and Freddie Quill scenes of Frank warming up to John about, his music and how talented he is. And this Maggie Gyllenhaal, Clara, in this, she's very, insecure and jealous about this. And as soon as she hears John say he has some songs that he's written, she embarrasses him in front of everybody because she knows he's just talking a big game, and she says play him now, and forces him to try to ad-lib these songs that turn out like we said, in a really embarrassing fashion for him.
On the cutting room floor, sadly, the scene where she gives Frank a hand job. He bangs his head against the bathroom mirror.
It breaks the mirror, and she's like, you're going to stop fucking around with this John guy? No more booze? The house they have here in Ireland, they just stop paying rent, so this German family shows up. And this is the scene that kind of leads to the mystique of Frank. But before we get to there, up until this point, it was starting to drive my sister crazy that she couldn't figure out who it was, because I was like, she's like, is it like a known actor? It's like, yeah, he's doing fairly well for himself. And she was getting more and more annoyed. And Dermot Mulroney was one of the names she threw out at one point. And I swear to God, she could not get it until the scene where he starts speaking in German.
I'm impressed.
When he starts speaking in German to the family, she goes, is it fucking Fassbender? And I was like, it is. Because, of course, the famous scene in X-Men where he's speaking German, and he speaks German in Inglourious Bastards also, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. I can't speak a lick of German. I can count to 4 in German just because of the Ramones, and I don't know if my sister can do any better than that. But just dialect and, pronunciation-wise, she can determine Michael Fassbender based off of how he speaks German.
And then once she figured that out, she was like, all right, I'm good. And she went to sleep.
She's like, I'm going to bed. I'm done. But what happens here is, one, son of Gleason explains that, like a fucking idiot, his grandfather left him a bunch of money, and he's like, oh, I'll just drop it on this. And that's what happens in a cult, first of all. And then 2, to convince this German family to leave, the mother of the family, Frank, takes out for a walk, and we don't hear, it's literally the end of...
Lost in translation.
Thank you. I couldn't even finish my own joke. I was getting there. But anyway, they walk off, and he says something to her, and then she's just overcome with joy, and they drive away, and she says something like to the effect of, thank you for teaching me the joy in life, or the meaning of life, or some bullshit. And it's like, what does this guy know? So then, of course, it builds him up like a prophet.
Yeah, he's kind of a musical Jesus figure. And it's not even that he asked for the money. Like you said, son of Gleason just volunteered his entire savings, his nest egg. So by now, Alex, I think that we have a pretty good grasp of the characters, or at least as good as it's going to get, right? You have Maggie Gyllenhaal, who's always angry. You have the French guy that only speaks French, except for later in the movie when suddenly he speaks English. And then you have the drummer that's usually silent. Like I didn't know until like much later that because I couldn't tell if she was French or not. Like if she was also somebody that only spoke French. And then you have what's his name, Ben, right? The guy that by his own admission, like used to have sex with mannequins, right? That's something he says at some point.
Rock and roll.
Yep. And then of course you have Frank, who wears a giant paper mache head. So the tone of this movie is like quirky. It's like quirky with capital Q. Did that start to give you pause once you realize that we're going to spend 90 minutes or so with these people and nobody else?
I wasn't fired up, I'll say that.
Were you waiting for the hamburger phone to make an appearance?
I was waiting for someone to call the other one fertile. I was waiting for Maggie Gyllenhaal to be pregnant and say, what is it?
Your ego is prego, Maggie?
That's it. Yeah, fertile Myrtle. Yeah. So we flash forward, 10 months or so, and we got a pretty sick beard on son of Gleason.
He's still tweeting.
If I wasn't so fucking fat, I think I would look like that. But like if I just got a strong coke addiction and lost 150 pounds, now fucking Domhnall Gleeson's gonna listen to this and be like, God damn, if I was fat, I would look like that guy. Nah, it's just us ginger beards got to look out for one another. But
get yourself a Frank. That's how you lose weight.
I guess so. Yeah, because he is kind of gaunt. The just absolute absurdity of the scene did make me laugh. He's got to ask Frank a question or something. He opens the door and hears the shower running, and he sees the Frank mask on the ground. He's like, "Oh man, I got to get a peek." Famously, El Santo or Mil Mascaras, those luchadors of yesteryear that would never be seen without their mask. That's one of the famous Jim Cornette stories about, I think it was the Clash of Champions in Corpus Christi he worked, where Mil Mascaras is, to just as quickly and concisely as I can do this, Mil Mascaras was a professional wrestler in Mexico, and of course they're famed for their masks. He was the man of 1,000 masks, and the way that works there is you never let down your guard. So the coolest thing you'll ever see is, those guys are treated like real celebrities back in those days and real sports figures. And so you'd see them at events in like 3-piece suits, but with their fucking masks on. And Jim Cornette told this story of working a show, and it was 88, 89, 90, 91, somewhere in that range. And he was backstage. He's like, "Who's that old guy over there?" And someone said, "That's Mil Mascaras." And he goes, "Oh, fuck." It's like, I saw him without the mask on, and that was pretty cool. And that's immediately what came to mind when I saw this. El Santo was so legendary, in fact, that he is featured in the Pixar film Coco as a Mexican celebrity that shows up in the afterlife.
With his mask on.
Correct. Shortly before his death, he was, I think I've told this story before on here, but shortly before his death, he was on, whatever the Mexican equivalent of the Today Show is, or Good Morning America and Good Morning Mexico, I guess. But he was just on there doing an appearance, and he lifted his mask up and just showed his face, kind of unprompted and unprovoked. And you could literally hear like women shrieking and men gasping, like, oh my God, like this was unbelievable. So I kind of have respect for that, the curiosity, but also protecting the gimmick. So I did appreciate this scene where he sees the mask on the ground, the paper mache head, and he's like, well, I got to see, what's back there. And Shame had already come out, so I'd be in the same boat of like, I want to see if that shit's real, dude. So he walks back, and the curtain flies open, and Frank's in there with another mask on, but with like a bag over it. Like when I was in kindergarten and I broke my arm and I had to take a shower with a bag over my arm. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's funny also, but also after you've seen the movie, it's dark because they're setting up the fact that there's two masks, so that later when there's a switcheroo of heads for a much more tragic scene, there's a setup for it, and it's really weird. But at the time, I didn't remember, so I thought also that it was kind of funny. What do you make of this decision to kind of let Fassbender talk from inside the mask?
He has relationships with real women now. But it's hard, He has to convince him to lie completely still, so, Hey, don't tell Don I said anything. He might think it a shameful secret.
Who is less intelligible, him or Tom Hardy as Bane?
Well, at least in this case, they stuck to their guns and didn't make him record another track to play over it.
I mean, we don't know that.
I guess. As much as I'll defend The Dark Knight Rises, that is easily the worst part about that movie, how his audio track doesn't match anything else in the movie. But also, like, Fassbender still, he's kind of got like a weird tone he's going for, but it's not.
But also, I mean, Bane is not a singer. Like, he never sings in the movies, so.
He should have been. If we had fucking Lenny Abrahamson directing Dark Knight Rises, Bane would have been up there crooning "Don't You Want Me, Baby." This is just Michael Fassbender talking like he's trying to disguise his voice. I was trying to remember who it was. Bartley Gorman was who Tom Hardy said he tried to sound like. And as having rewatched Dunkirk in the past day, that's also another one where he's just like, dude, just talk like yourself, man.
Well, we were talking about accents just last episode, like Ray Fiennes and him trying to sound like James Woods. Can you tell, like, were you thinking, yeah, he sounds American, like Frank sounds American, or did you think, oh no, Frank is European?
Oh, I forgot in the end he is American too. That's spoiler alert. He's from fucking Kansas.
Yep.
I fucked up. By reading like who was in this. Because even though like that's all I retained was it was Michael Fassbender and Son of Gleason. Because I forgot Maggie Gyllenhaal was there. I was like, oh shit, Maggie Gyllenhaal. And so I really messed up by I should have done it like my sister and just waited till he started speaking German to understand who it was. So I don't know if I can. My point being is I don't know if I can realistically answer those questions or fairly answer them.
Well, listeners, there's a lot of you that watch Frank, I'm sure, without knowing. Or maybe not. I mean, I don't know. This is more of a real talk part, but they're like, who goes to see Frank not knowing that Michael Fassbender is in it? That's a good question. How do you arrive to a movie like Frank? If it's not that your brother has a podcast and he's doing an episode about it, and that's why he's watching it. But, if you're just like a random person, did they advertise Fassbender like on the poster? Like, what was?
Oh
this?
Yeah, the theatrical poster. The top of it is Fassbender's performance is a masterclass. I'm just imagining like the guy or the gal that got bricked up at home watching Shame, and they're like, I need to see the next thing this guy does, and then went to this, be like, what the fuck is this?
And Abrahamson just punching the wall when he sees all the marketing materials. Like, I built the entire movie to a big reveal of this guy taking his mask off. He just ruined it with the poster.
So one of John's songs actually breaks through, and Clara and Frank are able to build on it and make a really good tune, and they have like a celebratory night because of it. They are really excited about what they lay down and, the potential that it holds. Only for the next morning to pay off the fact that we learn there's two masks, right?
Mm-hmm. What did you think when you saw Frank hanging from a tree?
I literally out loud said, what the fuck? Because
we're all having so much fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely quirky up until this point. I didn't know if they were going to run up and he was going to be like, gotcha, or something. But we see someone with the Frank mask hanging from a tree. They all cut it down, rush him over to a bench nearby, and then Frank walks in, kind of like, what the fuck's going on? They take the mask off, and it's Don, the manager, and we quickly learn the prior keyboardist had hanged himself. For a movie described as a comedy, I failed to see the comedy in this.
Yeah, it's really weird, especially when you consider that the opening was also, there was a suicide attempt, right? The keyboardist that Sonora Gleason ends up replacing, like, he was trying to kill himself too. It's like, it's funny. That guy, as far as we know, survives, but then this guy was not so lucky. I think that by now, especially, it becomes even clearer later on, but it's a movie that walks the tricky territory of being a comedy about mental illness. And that is just, you need a lot of skill to pull that off. And I don't know that they quite do it.
Yeah, and it doesn't help the tone quickly goes to comedy when they give him a Viking funeral. They put him on a boat and set it on fire and bring his ashes back in. I mean, I thought it was supposed to be played for comedy because it's a very dramatic cut to them prepping him to be burned at sea, And
you can't just do that anyway. I mean, I know they're in Ireland, but you can't just burn somebody's corpse.
Yeah, no shit. Like, it's a suicide. You should probably, you think it is, but you should immediately call the authorities to figure out what the fuck's going on.
Right.
A damning portrayal of Ireland.
Yeah. And there's procedures, like I said, like, even if it was just like a natural death, you can't just burn somebody's dead body in your backyard. I mean, I'm sure you have to report that.
Maybe it was in his will. Who knows?
Or you got to get a permit.
You ever seen Eulogy, where they give Rip Torn a Viking funeral like that?
And then the cops show up. Like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
Well, fear not, because things are good again. Because John reveals that he has been secretly uploading the band's recording sessions on social media, earning them a small fan following and an invitation to perform at South by Southwest.
Tell me, Alex. Tell me your reaction. Tell me about your reaction when he very excitedly said that they were invited to play at South by Southwest. Because mine was, of course they would.
Yeah, and that was still 2013 was the last time I went out like really excited for South by. And I remember just how kind of crushing of an experience it was and kind of upsetting. And I think I went to a few shows in 2014. I think the Generationals played and I made sure to go see them, but maybe I could be making that up. No, I saw them in 2013. So when this movie would have been made, I remember still having that optimism. And in the time that's passed since, it's just gotten, to me, much like the city of Austin, has gotten less and less enticing and become self-parody and what's malicious is not the right word. What am I looking for? Ill-intended. But, it still kind of had some pop and some zazz at the time this movie would have been made. Like, oh, South by Southwest. So that's all fine and good. And then they go to South by Southwest, but you know where they don't go is Austin, Texas. So that really annoyed me. And for anyone that's been to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and anyone that's been to Austin, Texas, knows they look absolutely nothing alike. Like at first when they were doing that shit where they were walking down the street, I was like, are they in fucking New Orleans? Because the way like the street was framed, I was like, you know, and they do stay at a hotel called the French Quarter Inn or some shit. But I was like, there's not any street in downtown Austin that looks anything like this. The architecture.
Okay, but that's movie magic.
No, movie magic. No, movie magic is you spend the first fucking 70 minutes of the movie on a boat getting to Austin, Texas.
I had more of an issue with just the overdone friendliness as they're walking down the street.
Oh, yeah. And that's
like, yes, it's like keep Austin weird, but at the same time, this is a guy that's wearing a giant paper mache.
That and like when they actually talk to people, it's like the two scene girls. And I was like, oh my God. And look, the overwhelming majority of people listening to this podcast right now have no fucking sympathy or like idea of really what we're like venting about. And that's fine.
I don't know, man. We get a lot of downloads from Texas, so you are probably pissing off a lot of people.
What am I doing? Austin sucks, dude. And part of that is because they booed my boy Frank off the stage here.
They don't boo him; they celebrate him.
Well, they do, and well, that's true. They fucking boo Son of Gleason, not Frank.
Yes, yeah. I was honestly, it was just funny. You're right that I don't know how this reads to somebody that doesn't live in Austin, and because if you only know Austin from movies, from the mythology around Austin, I guess this kind of makes sense, right? That this really weird band shows up at this festival that I guess celebrates weirdness, and they're kind of like set up to be a big hit, and it's just that they get in their own way. But if you live in Austin, it still makes sense in an annoying way. As in, like, you just want to tell the movie, don't encourage this. Just, how about you make a movie about that? A good band that shows up at South by Southwest.
Hello.
Something tells me that you guys are the CERN for Verb.
That's us.
We have to talk about, though, right before we get to Austin, quote unquote, we get a Maggie. It wouldn't be a Maggie Gyllenhaal movie without a big sex scene. And she gets in a fight with John, and he's in the hot tub, and he stands up, and I guess he's naked. They just start screaming at each other, and he calls her the C word, and she apparently is aroused by this, and they just have a just all-out fuckfest in the hot tub.
I mean, she's fucking him. I don't know that he's doing much.
The ensuing argument culminates in having angry sex and Clara threatening to stab him if the trip to America goes awry, as detailed poignantly by our friends at Wikipedia.
He literally says, "I'm dying here" at some point in that scene.
Contrarians canon, just their Contrarians universe, Julio, just clashing violently here when they're driving to Austin, and Son of Gleason says, "It's just like Paris, Texas, isn't it?"
Rookie mistake, and we point it out every time it happens. Do not reference a movie that's better than the one you're making.
Isn't it?
Like they shot Paris, Texas, and Texas.
My note here, is this supposed to be Austin? And then the scene girls want to take him to the best pancake or, breakfast spot in town, which immediately is like, okay, Magnolia Cafe. That's what everyone talks about here. They take him someplace called Caps, and does not exist. Not a real thing. Anyway, this is all too much for Frank to really take in. He doesn't understand, the magnitude of it, but also there's creative differences, as John feels they should be making a bit more like, not poppy, but more goer friendly music. You know what I mean? More of music people would actually want to listen to instead of just experimental drab.
What do you think of Fassbender's song? The one that he's like, "Oh, this is my most likable song."
I did laugh at that very hard. Where he's just like, I can't remember the words he's saying, but it's, tantamount to like puppy dogs, popsicles, rainbows, that type of thing.
Coca-Cola, lipstick ring, go dance all night, dance all night. I've got dancing legs. Woo! I've got dancing
Yeah, I think it's even funnier when you know that it's Fassbender under the
Oh,
mask.
absolutely. Yeah. Goes a long way.
Yeah. This is where he starts falling apart. Frank, that is, and where the movie now, at least when we had when I called him Ben, or at least Don, when Don committed suicide, the movie stopped for a few minutes trying to be funny, and it just took it seriously, at least for that scene. Here, Fassbender's falling apart. He's clearly having some sort of mental breakdown, but the movie doesn't stop the comedy. So it's just really awkward. I had trouble finding things funny because I knew that we were watching a man have a breakdown, and it goes on for several minutes. And just my thought was, well, they can't all be Silver Linings Playbook. Like, you can't have David O. Russell's talent to deal with mental health and comedy at the same time. But yeah, did you have that same feeling, Alex? Where you're like, this is not fun anymore. This is the equivalent of that scene in Observe and Report, like the one that I reference all the time, when Ray Liotta calls Seth Rogen to his office and just dresses him down, and then the guy that was hiding in the closet comes out. It's like, oh, I thought it was going to be funny, but it's yeah.
It's actually it's kind of sad.
Yep.
But at least in that movie, we get the redemption at the end where he goes, that character gets, way to go, Ronnie. Whereas here, it just gets worse and worse. This movie, O'Doyle rules style, drives off a fucking cliff in the third act. So, leading up to the performance, the band begins to argue over creative differences. Clara and Frank disappear shortly before the concert, and John finds them in an alley. An alley that kind of looks like the alley I used to smoke cigarettes in my job, but definitely not.
It's 6th Street, man.
It's definitely not. Where Clara is helping Frank stave off a mental breakdown, John tries to get Frank to go back to the festival with him, prompting Clara to stab him in the leg as promised. After she is arrested, John uses a scandal to build publicity for the band, because he says like chinchilla or something when he gets stabbed, right?
Yes, yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Which was the safe word for the entire band.
That's right. Yeah, and that's what builds the online like legacy of it. It's what's a famous viral video where there's like a quote people use now? Leave Britney alone or something like that. It's
that little kid. Is this real life? Is that what the little kid that was high? After going to the dentist?
Or Charlie bit my fingers. Yeah, that type of shit. It becomes viral and people are wanting to quote it. John uses scandal to build publicity for the band. The night before the concert, Nana and Barquet quit the band. John and Frank go on stage by themselves in spite of Frank's deteriorating mental health. When John tries to begin the set with one of his own songs rather than one from the album, Frank has a breakdown and collapses on stage.
Did you feel cheated that we didn't get a full performance from Fassbender and Son of Gleason there?
Absolutely. We don't really, I guess at the end you can say we do, but I want a full Fassbender musical performance.
Yeah, just at least one of the songs, even if it's just the happy, likable song. There's a crowd. I wanted to see them play in Austin.
And we forgot to mention too, Fassbender like full on decorates his mask for this. He puts like mascara on it and lipstick, and it does lead to in the following scene. It's actually kind of funny when he wakes up and all the makeup smeared on the mask. But
well, he comes out on drag, right? Like he goes to the bathroom, then he comes out and he's like, "Let's fuck."
Yeah, because he goes in saying, "I need to do my ablutions." And then, yeah, just it's one of those almost like a cartoon, too. It's like a revolving door. He goes in and comes right back out. But they end up in a hotel. Everything's fucked up. John's watching the TV and some news report is on South by Southwest. And he says, weren't we supposed to play there? And this leads to John having a complete meltdown, trying to rip the head off of Frank, the helmet or mask, whatever you want to call it. And he runs out of the hotel room to get away from him because of this and gets hit by a car. Son of Gleason, chases after him, feeling like bad about this. And when he gets there, the mask is broken on the ground. And the driver said, he went that way. And said, was he hurt? Well, he was limping. And then Son of Gleason goes, did you see his face? And the guy looks at him like, what the fuck are you talking about? And before you can even process that thought, Son of Gleason just gets fucking like Rikishi running over Steve Austin at the 1999 Survivor Series. Boom! Hit with a car. What's that Brad Pitt movie? Meet Joe Black?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, but
there you
this
go.
is like the double Regina George. Just
There you go.
Wham,
There you go.
Bam. Just first Fassbender, then Son of Gleason. It's like you really don't see coming that second one, but he should have been a lot worse off. It's kind of like that cut in The Long Goodbye, where like you expect him to be like really fucked up. It turns out that no, I mean, I guess he broke his arm. Maybe he's in bad shape, but not as bad as I thought he was going to be.
So he finds the rest of the band. They're playing as like a trio in a dive bar, and tries to make good with them, and they pretty much reject him, right? Tell him to go push rope up a hill.
Yeah, because he tells them that they were right. This is the moment where Son of Gleason starts turning. He grows. He becomes a different person. He tells them they were right, that he doesn't think he has any talent, so that's why he, like a leech, attach himself to them. This is the first time that we hear Maggie Gyllenhaal singing, and it is soul crushing. And I was like, please stop, make this stop. And thankfully it stops because Son of Gleason decides that he's going to go on a quest to find Frank somewhere, which takes us into a tiny road trip where he just follows online clues. The power of the internet, Alex. Did you cringe at the power of the internet taking us to the climax?
Any lead he gets, like anyone can just DM him on Twitter and be like, hey, go to fucking Macon, Georgia, and he'll be there. Go to Poco, West Virginia. He might be there.
It's a miracle that he didn't get serial killed.
Yeah, exactly. He gets on the road and tries to hitchhike and ends up in Evan Peters' car. He wants to take him back to his apartment to watch some movies.
Evan Peters wearing a giant head.
He finally does get a tip that leads him to Bluff City, Kansas, where he finds Frank. And this is where we see Michael Fassbender for the first time in this movie. And this literally is like Santa Claus isn't real. There is no fun or magic in the world.
Nope. He has the scars.
Art is not a mystery.
You can see the marks around his head where the mask was resting. It really, I mean, it feels like that visual feels like it belongs in a different movie. Considering where we were in the first half, where we were just like making songs with the sound of doors closing and toothbrushes rubbing against each other and all that stuff. And now here we see this guy and Fassbender is a great actor, so he can really sell you a believable portrayal of somebody that is mentally ill. And now that you don't have the mask covering it, it's just, there's no whimsy. It's just kind of disturbing and sad, and it really recontextualizes, I think, the movie in a way that you were like, oh, even when I thought that we're having fun, this guy was in a lot of pain. And so it's quite a downer. And this is the end of the movie, where Son of Gleason comes to apologize to a very sick man.
After numerous failed attempts, John finally succeeds in tracking Frank to his hometown of Bluff City, Kansas, where he's living with his parents. Frank is scarred and balding from prolonged use of the mask. Frank's parents explain that he suffered from severe mental health issues all his life and began wearing the mask as a teenager after his dad made it for him for an alleged costume party, but that he was always musically talented. Frank declares he has been unable to make music since the band fell apart. John takes Frank to the dive bar where the rest of the band is playing. They quickly realize who he is and join him as he begins to sing. With the original Soren Purvis restored, John leaves the bar alone.
He goes off to join the Empire.
Yay?
He told Fassbender, look, I know you're pretty down on yourself right now, but come with me so you can hear what really bad music sounds like. And once again, we're treated to Maggie Gyllenhaal singing some really depressing ballad. And then Fassbender joins. And what do you think, Alex, of this final song, the song that takes us out, the big triumphant return of Frank to the band?
Wash and smell, they could be cleaner. Stench of cigarettes and stale urea. I love you all. Prodigal son was to return.
Did you just add it on Spotify?
I mean, it was a bit of an earworm. It was, I love you. Oh, I guess. But at this point, I was just like, really? After all we've been through, we're just going to kind of go out on this sad note of like nothing was learned. And so I just was ambivalent about the song, to be honest with you.
I mean, they're where they started. And Son of Gleason, I guess he learned that music is not for him. And the camera goes back to where he was sitting at the bar and his beer is
where he's going to go home to no job, parents that are like, we thought you were dead, and absolutely no money in his savings.
Welcome to the real world.
Ridiculous.
Did you stick around for the end credits to hear the studio version of the I Love You All song?
I did, and I dug the credits, like with the animation and visual effects that they had.
Michael Fassbender getting the end credit.
And I did learn, yes, Michael Fassbender getting the end credit was fantastic. And I learned the tree surgeon was not Paul Britton of SNL fame, who I thought it was. It was Travis Hammer.
Well, he's also not Michael Fassbender, which is what the movie wants you to believe for a moment.
Yeah, it's an upsetting ending, to say the very least.
We're having so much fun, Alex, with the band. Or at least it looked like we were supposed to. We probably peaked with the jacuzzi sex.
I mean, to be honest, that's a fucking allegory for life. You peak with jacuzzi sex, trust me. You fuck in a hot tub once, it's all downhill from there.
Just ask Cal MacLachlan.
Oh, man. Well, that was a swimming pool, but you have any sex that resembles that, you know, life's never looking up again.
All right. Well, that was Frank. That was not the city of Austin.
You beat me to it. I was going to be, of all the things it wasn't the city of Austin.
Let's go to Real Talk, Alex.
Hell yeah.
El Madrid, it's nice to see you. It's really nice to be here. I love you all. Still beer, fat fuck, smoked out cowpoke, sequined mountain ladies. I love you all. Put your arms around me, fiddly digits, itchy britches. I